So, as we look at the play Hamlet, basically what we're looking at is something that we could call a character study. In other words, it's a play that revolves around one character and sort of their growth and evolution as the play goes on. So in order to really understand Hamlet as a character, but also to understand Hamlet as the play, we need to look at the things authors do in order to really create well-developed characters. So that's what we're going to look at in this section. And just like usually when you have these videos, you should probably be taking notes because these are things that we'll be practicing throughout the unit. So when we look at a character, this seems really obvious. This is Hamlet from one of the videos that we'll watch. He's not a real person. That sounds really obvious, but actually when we tend to read literature in our world now, we tend to think of people as real. We expect these characters to act in ways and to talk in ways and to think in ways that we in the real world do. That expectation wasn't necessarily there when Shakespeare was writing, but one of the reasons that sort of this character stays on throughout history, one of the reasons we like him is because he still has that sense of realness, that verisimilitude that we talked about. But really, Hamlet is words. He's not a person. He doesn't have an appearance that's ever described. We don't know anything about him. He is words on a page. So we as readers rely on those words to make sense of him and to understand what's happening. So there are certain words when we're thinking about Hamlet that are going to be more important than others. So when we look at the elements of character, there are 4 basic elements that we're going to look at when it comes to verisimilitude. In other words, a character can't feel real if they're missing any of these things. And the first one is that character needs to have a sense of opinion or judgment. And we'll talk about what we mean by opinion and judgment in just a minute. The second thing that we expect is that there has to be some sort of emotional depth. So when they're put in a situation, we need to see some sort of reaction that's not just logical, but that we need to get a sense of how the characters feel when they're reacting to situations. We need to get a sense of how they interact with other people. So we look at what they say to other people, how they treat other people, how often they interact with other people. All of those will give us a sense of them. And then the last one is their motivation or their drive. So in other words, what keeps them moving forward? What do they want to get out of life? Just like in real life, these motivation and drive is what's going to sort of dictate most of a character's actions. So we're going to look at all of these more in depth, and we're going to look at sort of this chain that they create in the way that they interact with each other and affect each other. So the first place that you always have to start are a character's motivations. Everything that happens in a play is dictated by what a character wants to get out of a given situation or out of their lives, whatever it is. For Hamlet, I'm not going to give you examples of motivations because that's something we need to figure out as the play goes on. Motivations are the base for everything a character does, and just to make it more complicated, motivations are usually the part of a character that's least defined in the play itself or in any text. Hamlet's not going to come on stage and say, here's what I want to do and here's why. No character does that. We have to read between the lines. Characters who do give us their motivation, we should also treat that as sort of suspect. Typically, what a person is willing to verbalize as their motivation might not actually be the underlying drive. We'll see that a little bit as we talk about Hamlet's motivations as the unit goes on. So motivations are sort of the starting point, but they're also going to be one of the last things that you figure out about a character. So how do you figure out a character's motivations? Well, we look at the other 3 elements. So we have their opinions and judgments. When we say opinion, we don't mean, if they're liberal or conservative. We mean, what do they value in life? When they think about the world, what do they think is important? What do they think is worth your time? Those are their values. That's what we want to look at. So for Hamlet, for example, this is Hamlet, we have a few things that we know are really important to Hamlet. We know that loyalty plays a big part in Hamlet's interactions, and we know that he cares about that. We know that wit and intelligence are important to him, and we know that his legacy, or just the idea of legacies in general, are important to him. We'll see a lot of this sort of said directly. Hamlet will tell us as we listen to him throughout the play. We'll also see it in some of the other things that he does. These are by no means the only three things that are important to him. They're a starting place. I'm giving you some examples. So once we get a sense of what he thinks or how he judges other people, then we can start looking at his reactions. Because reactions are going to be a result of a character's values. So for example, if these are Hamlet's values, these are his reactions. So think about loyalty. We know Hamlet values loyalty because this is his main complaint about his mom, for example, that she is not loyal. So his loyalty, his value of loyalty, causes him to be rather unforgiving to his mother. Even after his mother is sort of absolved from all blame by the ghost, Hamlet can't forgive her because he just can't get over this betrayal of loyalty to his father. Wit, we know, is important because it's part of the reason that Hamlet is sort of impatient with everybody. He's particularly impatient with characters like Polonius or Claudius, who don't seem to get his complicated wordplay. These characters who he feels are maybe less intelligent than him. So they cause him to feel really frustrated and impatient in a situation. The fact that he values legacy means that Hamlet has a great deal of self-awareness, and this is going to lead to some unfortunate situations later where he's unable to sort of act because he's constantly debating how it's going to affect his legacy. How is he going to be remembered? So you can see here, they're connected. These values directly impact their feelings. Which brings us to the next one, which is their interactions. So how they treat other people. Again, this treatment is going to be based on their judgments and their feelings. So again, let's look at Gertrude. Because Hamlet values loyalty, he's very unforgiving to anything that he perceives as a betrayal. So he tends to be cruel to his mother. He can't be kind, even though the ghost has implored him to be kind, because of this chain that you see here. The wit, because he values intelligence, he's very impatient with people who aren't intelligent, so he tends to mock them because he sort of can't get over that they don't understand. Legacy, he has this great self-awareness that his actions impact others, but that leads him to be overly cautious in some situations. Like he can't act because he's constantly thinking. So you can see that these three form a chain. They all rely on each other and they sort of dictate what we see in the play. So one of the questions people ask is, okay, so what comes first? And the truth is there's no good answer to that. Maybe the first thing we notice is that he's cruel. A lot of times interactions are the most obvious because they're often, especially in a play, presented as the most objective. So maybe you start here and that leads you backwards. Maybe you start with loyalty because he says something. Whatever you notice first should lead you to some of these other things. So if I notice that he's cruel, I ask, why is he cruel? Well, because he can't forgive his mom. Why? Well, he values loyalty and she wasn't loyal. These four characteristics, there's an easy way to remember them, and we're going to associate them with body parts because it's fun. So imagine this is Hamlet, a very sad drawing of Hamlet. Opinions, judgments, we associate them with the head because think about it, that's where your brain is, so that's where we develop opinions. Interactions with your arms, think about those are the things that reach out into the world and sort of touch it and interact with it. Feelings, it's kind of pointing to his torso. Imagine that he has a little heart right here, so that's why we remember feelings and emotional reactions. And motivations are your legs, because your motivation is the thing that drives you forward. It's the thing that keeps you moving. And also remember, motivations are the base. They're at the bottom. None of this stuff can stand without this in the base. As we go through Hamlet, what you're going to need to do is start pulling quotes that would fit in all of these four categories. And we're actually going to do this as sort of a class project throughout it, because we want to understand the character of Hamlet. And we're going to do that by looking at these four things. And we're going to start to form a chain based on his motivations and how they affect these other three. So we will start that actually Wednesday in class.